Hey there, fellow travelers. We all crave breaking free, bags packed, chasing the globe's wildest fringes, don't we? Trekking dense jungles, scaling jagged mountains, or sipping gritty drinks in back alley dives your mom would torch on sight. But in 2025, some of the planet's most electric corners have slammed their gates shut. And if you're American, you're flat out of luck. We're tearing into 12 countries that have flipped us the bird. Borders bolted, dreams smashed, stakes climbing higher than a warlord's wall. This ain't no sugar-coated travel fluff. It's the unvarnished truth on spots snarling get lost. And trust me, number one's a shocker that'll smack you blind, wilder than you'd ever guess. Welcome to GlobeWander, where we sling the rawest stories, no fluff, no filter. Not subscribed yet? Quit stalling. Smash that button, join the renegades, and let's dive into the 12 places Americans can't hit this year, and the twisted why behind it. 12. North Korea. First up, North Korea, the undisputed king of keep your ass out. In 2024, they didn't just lock the door. They fused it shut with industrial steel and chucked the key into the abyss, banning Americans with a feral snarl about national security and spies in flip-flops sneaking secrets. This ain't breaking news. Pyongyang's been a fortress of paranoia since the Cold War's dark dawn, but last year they cranked the dial to 11. Why? Missiles ripping the sky, sanctions choking their veins, and a US they're damn sure is plotting to topple Kim's Iron Throne. A paranoid fever dream fueled by decades of standoffs. This isn't a chill beach escape, it's a dystopian hellscape where reality bends. A few daring lunatics used to slip through. 3,000 tours via shadowy agencies, tailed by grim-faced handlers who'd sooner shoot than smile. It was a propaganda-soaked plunge. Statues you're forced to salute, streets so silent you'd hear a pin drop, and loudspeakers blasting the dear leader's glory like a warped hymn on loop. Then, 2024 roared in. Tensions spiked hotter than a reactor, plans imploded, and those agencies turned to ash. They're also terrified of germs. Sanctions have gutted their hospitals, leaving crumbling wards, rusty scalpels, and no meds to fend off a single cough. One tourist sniffle could spark chaos they can't contain. It's a sealed crypt now, eerie, untouchable, dripping with forbidden intrigue that pulls you in, yet pushes you away. Would you dare crash that wall if you could? Hit the comments hard, rebels. 11. Russia next. Russia, a colossal beast that's waved us off with a middle finger salute. In 2024, they slashed American visas, turning Moscow's sprawl and Siberia's icy wilds into forbidden zones. This is Cold War 2.0 reboot. Cyber strikes slicing networks, election meddling rumors swirling like vodka in a storm, and sanctions piling up so thick you'd choke trying to swallow them. The Kremlin's barking citizen safety, but it's a deafening screw you to Uncle Sam. A geopolitical jab echoing decades of icy mistrust. Russia's a titan, Red Square's chaotic pulse, St. Petersburg's frozen elegance cutting through the chill, vodka shots in gritty backstreet bars that taste like defiance. Over 300,000 of us invaded in 2023, pumping millions into their cash-starved game, fueling a tourism surge that rivaled their oil rigs. Now, that river of green's dried to dust. Hotels sit like ghost towns, guides scramble for scraps, and the Trans-Siberian Railway's a fading dream track to nowhere. Worse, those with Russian blood can't trek back to see babushkas spinning tales over tea. Zoom's their lifeline, a pixelated shadow of home. It's raw, it's ruthless, a neon-lit fracture splitting the globe wider with every passing day. How long till we're back raising glasses in peace? Ride this chaos with GlobeWander. Subscribe now, cause we're tracking every jagged turn. 10. Iran. At number 10, Iran storms in, a land that's been flipping off empires since ancient kings carved their legends into desert stone. In 2024, they swung the hammer down hard. Americans banned, no talks, no quarter given. This ain't a polite pass. It's a fortress wall crashing shut, forged in a decades-long brawl that's left scars deeper than the Zagros Mountains. The US and Iran have been throwing haymakers, nuclear standoffs that rattle the world, sanctions squeezing like a python, diplomatic ties shredded into dust by years of mistrust and power plays. Last year it hit boiling point. Talks collapsed in a fireball, threats flew like shrapnel, and Iran bellowed, "You're out." They're dead certain every backpack hides a spy, every camera's a plot to unravel their grip. A paranoia baked into their bones. This stings sharp. Iran's a historical juggernaut, where empires clashed in blood-soaked sands and poets spun verses that echo through time. Its roots run primal. Ruins that scoff at centuries, mosques blazing like jewels under a merciless sun, markets thick with spice, sweat, and untamed defiance. A brave handful once slipped past the veil, chasing a culture that thrives beyond the headlines, a warmth that laughs in the face of the feud roaring overhead. But 2024 torched that fragile thread. Iran's tourism, already teetering, plummeted into the red. Over 1 million outsiders crossed its borders in 2019, a vibrant pulse. Now, American tracks are wiped clean, a void in the tally. The fallout's vicious. Guest houses gather dust, guides who spun tales of Xerxes and Persepolis sit silent. A nation's soul, cloaked in suspicion thicker than Tehran's smog. The ban's a high-stakes role. Iran's betting isolation outmuscles infiltration, but it's a double-edged blade slicing their own wrists. Their economy groans under the strain, tourism's a hollow shell of its past, while we're left peering at a locked chest of history, rebellion, and untapped fire. It's a deadlock choking the air, diplomacy's a coward ducking the fight, and 2025's a barren stretch for any shot at crossing that line. What's lost when a culture welds itself shut? Spill your gut below. This one's a furnace of fury and legacy. 9. Cuba. Number 9's Cuba, the Caribbean's rogue heartbeat, now a no-go shore for Americans. In 2024, they bolted the gates tight, a ban carved from decades of raw tension and unyielding pride that runs deeper than the Gulf Stream. This isn't a gentle, later. It's a guttural never again, rooted in a clash that's teetered on a razor's edge since the Cold War's frost first bit. They call it sovereignty, a steel shield against U.S. phantoms they've battled since missiles cast shadows over the horizon. The story's a roller coaster. 2016 cracked the gates ajar, a fleeting truce that unleashed a tidal wave of wanderers into Havana's electric, sun-bleached chaos. The island erupted. Streets throbbed with rhythms fierce enough to wake the dead. Cigars flared like offerings to forgotten rebels. Vintage cars growled through a time warp that defied the modern grind. It was a wild, fleeting rush. Tourism surged, a lifeline for a nation battered by embargoes, numbers climbing skyward till the world flipped the script. Then the counterblow landed. Sanctions tightened like a noose around the island's neck. Cuba bared its teeth in defiance, and 2024's ban was the fatal strike. The damage cuts deep. Visitors plunged 20% in 6 months, a brutal bleed-out for an economy that thrived on foreign faces and their open wallets. Hotels that once buzzed with life now rot in eerie silence. Docks where cruise ships loomed stand barren as bones, and an island's fiery spirit flickers under the crushing weight. For us, it's a cruel taunt. 90 miles from freedom, a paradise of rum-soaked nights and revolution dangles just beyond our grasp. The ban's a fist slammed into a past that refuses to heal, a wound festering in the salty trade winds. Cuba's engines still roar, defiance in every rev, but those roads are off our map, a loss that echoes in every silenced beat of salsa. What happens when an island doubles down against the world? Hit the comments hot. This one's a blaze of exile and soul. 8. Venezuela. Number 8 crashes in. Venezuela, a South American titan crumbled into chaos, sparring Americans with a 2024 edict that screams desperation louder than a collapsing oil rig. For us, it's a severed artery. Family ties across borders fray into threads. A land of raw, untouchable beauty slips into the fog of legend. The ban's a barricade, but it traps more than it frees. Venezuela's a prisoner entombed in its own ruin, and we're exiles cast from its fractured tale. Where does a nation run when it bolts the world out? Drop your take below. This one's a mournful roar for a fallen titan. Libya. Number 7's Libya, a North African tempest that's raged since its crown shattered, banning Americans in 2024 with a guttural, "Stay the hell gone." This isn't just a tourist blacklist, it's a desperate cry from a land shredded by its own chaos, a ban rising from the ashes of a revolution that veered into madness. The fuse lit in 2011. Gaddafi's fall ignited a firestorm, but no phoenix rose, just a plunge into a brutal pit of warring tribes clawing for scraps. Factions sliced the desert like vultures tearing flesh, oil flared as a beacon for greed and power, and stability became a fleeting myth carried off by the Saharan winds. The US branded it a death trap years back. Warnings of bombs ripping through markets and betrayal lurking in every deal. But this ban's the iron seal on a long-closed gate. Libya's a buried horde screaming potential. Roman cities outshining Italy's relics, sands stretching into an endless void. A coast where ancient empires once anchored their fleets. Yet it's a wasteland now. Wars devoured every shred of promise, leaving behind only husks of what could have been a jewel in the Mediterranean crown. The ban's less a choice, more a gut reflex. Tourism's a twisted hallucination when bullets outnumber beds in a land where peace is a ghost story. The toll cuts savage. Millions displaced, their homes reduced to dust, their futures traded in blood-soaked deals between rival guns. Ports that once thrummed with trade and life are now silent graves for rusting ships, abandoned to the tides. The ban shuts us out, but it's Libya that's suffocating. isolated, bleeding out, a nation where hope's a currency spent decades ago in the fires of conflict. It's a land clawing for resurrection. But 2025's no savior. Only silence holds court over the dunes. What's left when war calls the final shot? Hit the comments heavy. This band's a desert dirge echoing loss. 6. Yemen. Number 6. Yemen, a warrior forged in relentless fire, banning Americans in 2024 as its scars bleed rivers of pain. This isn't a quiet no thanks. It's a guttural roar from a nation that's been clawing through a living hell since 2015, when civil war sank its jagged teeth into every corner of its soul. Rebels and rulers tore it wide open. Airstrikes shattered ancient cities into rubble. Famine gnawed at bones with a hunger that spares no one, and 24 million lives turned into pawns in a brutal, endless game with no victor in sight. The band's a shield wall. For them, for us. Yemen's a saga of defiance carved in stone. Ancient towers that mock the ruin around them. Trade routes that birthed coffee's bitter legend. A spirit that once lit Arabian nights with tales of grit and gold. But that's a tattered scroll now. Wars erased it line by line, leaving a wasteland of hunger, ash, and shattered dreams. Tourism's a cruel, twisted jest, where caravans once crossed with riches, bombs rained down in relentless fury, where bazaars once sang with life, silence screams louder than the blasts. The stats etch a grim tombstone. 80% of the population needs aid to survive. Cholera stalks the shadows like a reaper, and history lies buried under mountains of rubble. The band's a heavy bolt on a door already barred. Locals who might have once hawked wares to curious outsiders now fish in desperation to scrape by, their dreams drowned in a relentless sea of strife that shows no mercy. For us, it's a snapped thread to a fading lifeline. A land of fierce beauty and unbreakable will drifts into haunting myth, untouchable, unreachable, a shadow on the edge of memory. Yemen's a battle cry lost in the void. 2025 offers no balm, no break, just the crushing weight of a world that's turned its back on a nation fighting to breathe. What's lost when a legend falls to war's grinder? Drop your heat below. This one's a howl, tearing through the dark. Afghanistan. Number 5. Afghanistan, an untamed beast banning Americans in 2024 with a snarl of fierce independence. This isn't a casual maybe, it's a gauntlet hurled by a land sculpted in blood and unyielding defiance, ruled by the Taliban since 2021's dust settled over the US retreat. They've hacked their own path through the chaos, and we're not on it. No meddling is their war cry. A ban that's less a polite dodge and more a get lost. Chiseled deep into the rock of their resolve. Afghanistan's been a no-man's land for years. Terrorism's shadow stretches long and dark, ambushes lurk in every jagged pass, and peace is a whisper lost to the howling winds of history. The band's a steel claw gripping tight, our dirt, our rules, our bloody fight. This is a land of razor-sharp edges, peaks that stab the sky with brutal grandeur, valleys cradling ancient secrets etched in stone. A legacy of warriors who've spat in the face of every invader foolish enough to try their luck. But that glory's a fading shade. Poverty's the new conqueror, grinding half the nation into the dust under its heel, while health crumbles in mud-shack husks that pass for clinics in a land time forgot. Tourism? A wild, unreachable fantasy, where silk roads once wove threads of wealth across continents, now only faint echoes linger in the wind. The band's a chain forged in fire. Locals who might have peddled tales or rugged wares to outsiders are left to scavenge in the dirt, their solitude a cage crafted by rulers who'd rather rule ashes than share them. For us, it's a towering wall, a domain of raw might and untamed spirit slips into the dusk of memory, a frontier we can't storm no matter how hard we rage. Afghanistan stands alone, a fortress forged in a fractured world, and in 2025's a season of exile. Ours and theirs, a mutual banishment from a shared past. What's the toll when a land bolts itself tight against the tide? Hit the comments hard. This band's a rumble shaking the void. 4. Syria. Number 4. Syria. A titan brought low by its own raging fury, banning Americans in 2024 with a guttural growl of enough. This isn't a slow fade into shadow. It's a despot's iron decree, birthed from a war that's devoured a nation since 2011's brutal dawn. The story's a tragedy carved in stone. 13 million souls uprooted from their roots, cities pounded into ash and ruin, a regime clinging to power with hands stained crimson from a decade of bloodletting. They shout terrorism and outsiders, but it's a choke chain masked as caution. A ban that's all about control, strangling what little remains. Syria was once a colossus, roads where Roman legions marched in conquest, fortresses that defied crusaders' steel, markets pulsing with 1,000 tons weaving a tapestry of trade and life. That's a ghost story now. War's rewritten it all in shades of ruin and an oppressive hush that smothers the past. Tourism's a corpse rotting in the sun, where wanderers once traced the veins of history through bustling streets. Only specters drift across the wreckage. The toll's apocalyptic. 6 million fled beyond borders into exile. 7 million roam within, homeless on their own scarred soil. Schools, clinics, dreams, all crumbled to dust under the weight of conflict. The bands of seals slammed onto a crypt. Locals who might have thrived on foreign coins waste away in the rubble. A nation's heartbeat muffled by the chains of its own making. A pulse fading with every passing day. For us it's a lifeline severed. A land of ancient fire and relentless will fades into haunting legend. A horizon we can't cross no matter how we yearn. Syria's a warrior bleeding out its final gasps, walled off by pride and unrelenting pain. And 2025's no dawn, just a dusk that deepens into night with no end in sight. What's lost when a cradle of civilization turns into its own tomb? Drop your take below. This band's a mournful hymn for a world gone quiet. 3. Myanmar. Number 3. Myanmar, a rebel spark smothered by its own cold steel, banning Americans in 2024 with a junta's icy, unyielding wrath. This isn't a fleeting spat. It's a brutal reckoning from a 2021 coup that tore the soul out of a nation, leaving jagged scars that bleed raw and deep even now. Protests crashed against a wall of bullets, freedom was stuffed into cages, and the military's fist tightened like a vice. Now they've barred us, raging against sanctions and the faintest whispers of revolt that echo through the streets. Myanmar was a siren's call that once rang loud. Temples bursting from jungles like forgotten deities rising from the earth, lakes where boats skim across mirrored skies in a dance of light, a culture weaving silk and iron into a tapestry of resilience. That's a dying hum now. Wars drowned the melody, twisting promise into a prison of barbed wire and despair. Tourism's a shipwreck strewn across the shore. Once, millions crossed its borders each year, a flood of riches that swelled markets and villages until the coup drained it to a dictator's parched trickle. The ban's a razor slash. 90% of visitors vanished in the coup's wake, and 2024's edict carved even deeper. Markets that thrived on foreign eyes now rot in silence. Villages that once opened arms to the world wither into dust. For us, it's a barrier we can't breach. A land of grace and defiance slips into the shadows. A forbidden coast where courage battles chains in a fight that's as inspiring as it is heartbreaking. Myanmar's a stronghold built by its own hands. A nation staked on solitude over surrender. And 2025's a stretch of ghosts haunting both sides. Theirs locked in, ours locked out. What's the cost when a people's flame gets shackled by force? Hit the comments with your fire. This band's a tempest of grief and grit raging wild. 2. Somalia. Number 2. Somalia, Africa's feral heartbeat pounding free, banning Americans in 2024 'cause law's a myth where it roams untamed. This isn't a diplomatic jab, it's a primal shrug from a land where anarchy wears the crown, where pirates and warlords etch rules in salt, sand and blood across a coast that bows to no one. No state holds the reins, chaos reigns supreme, and the band's a mutual keep out. Us from them from us, a standoff born in the dust of collapse. Somalia's a rogue vision burning bright. Coasts that stretch into oblivion with waves that defy taming. Deserts howling with a freedom so raw it cuts. A pulse that beats fierce and relentless through every inch of its wild soul. But it's a vortex of destruction. Wars torn it apart since the 90s, shredding order into dust finer than the dunes. Militias prowl the inland wastes, seas swarm with raiders who'd slit throats for a haul, and survival's the only game anyone plays. Tourism's a fable lost to time, where trade winds once carried wealth across the Horn, now only wrecks drift aimless in the tide. The band's a mere footnote. 80% of its people claw by on pennies, a nation too fractured to hawk its soul to anyone, let alone outsiders. For us, it's a sealed frontier we can't pierce. A land of bold beauty and iron will blurs into mist, a shore we can't storm, no matter how hard we push. Somalia's a beast unbound, a knot of turmoil that refuses to bend, and 2025's a year of distance. Its solitude a throne it claims, and a trap it can't escape. What's left when a land flips its middle finger at the entire world? Drop your fire below. This band's a cry tearing loose from the edge. 1. China. Number 1. China, the dragon bellowing no more, banning Americans in 2025 and flipping the world into a tailspin of shock. This isn't a whisper in the dark, it's a titan's earth-shaking blast, A ban forged in 2024's inferno of trade wars, tech theft battles, and a diplomatic slugfest that's left the globe reeling on its axis. They cloak it as security, but it's a warlord's power play. Cross us, and you lose it all. China's a colossus that dwarfs imagination. Walls twisting through centuries like a serpent of stone, clay armies standing guard over eternity, cities throbbing with a billion dreams that pulse louder than thunder. Once, it swallowed travelers whole. Millions stormed its gates yearly, hunting dumplings through neon-drenched alleys, climbing peaks that mock the sky's reach, fueling a $14 billion tourism juggernaut that roared with global might. That's ash and embers now. 2024's clash set the welcome mat ablaze, and 2025's ban is the reckoning that burned it to the ground. The fallout's seismic. Hotels sag under the weight of vacant rooms, skies clear of foreign wings that once darkened them, a nation's vaults bleed dry where we once poured rivers of gold into their coffers. For us, it's a gut shot that lands hard. A realm of neon brilliance and ancient lore fades into a haze we can't pierce. A forbidden empire where silk slams against steel in a clash of past and present. China's playing deity, cities that once beckoned with open arms now sneer from behind the wall, a culture that shaped the world locked tight in a vault no key can touch. The band's a chessboard flipped upside down. 5% of their GDP once rode the unstoppable wave of tourism's tide, and now they bet solitude's iron fist outpunches surrender on their terms. It's a giant flexing its muscle. A planet redrawn in the fire of 2025's upheaval, and we're outcasts exiled from its thunderous roar. What's lost when a titan welds its gates shut and dares the world to blink? Scream your gut in the comments. This ban's the apocalypse of wanderlust, and it's rewriting the rules. Pick a side. Want the twist? Some may crack or lock tighter by 2026. Subscribe now, cause we're the renegades riding every shift of this wild ride. Which band's got you burning? Smash that like, roar in the comments. We're just getting started. With that said, we've ripped through the 12 countries kicking Americans to the curb in 2025. A rogues lineup of bolted gates and raised fists, from North Korea's steel shroud to China's rattling snub. This is travel's dark, untamed edge, and GlobeWander's your fearless guide through the storm. Subscribe now, rebels. Next time, we're flipping it with 12 spots to snatch your soul. No bans in the way. Love this grit? Slam that like, ring the bell, and howl in the comments. Which band's got you raging?